Sue Moroney.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. That's very kind of you, given that I very rudely interrupted your decision prior to that, and I'm so pleased that it didn't make any impact when it came to giving me the call on the title of this bill. And at the outset, I do want to congratulate my colleague Grant Robertson, and I'm very pleased that I'm congratulating him while speaking on the title of the bill, because I would hate for anyone to think that I was congratulating Grant Robertson for bringing forward the bill that is next on the order paper that was showing up, I think, on the television screens before. And I'm sure that Grant Robertson is also very grateful that he's not been congratulated for bringing that particular bill forward. So I do have the opportunity to reiterate that the bill that I am standing up to support, and the one that I'm congratulating my colleague on bringing forward, is in fact the Royal Society of New Zealand Amendment Bill 2010, and not the one that's coming up on the order paper afterwards. And so I'm pleased that I'm debating the title so that I can just remind people about that this is the bill about the Royal Society and not the bill about taking away students' freedom to actually have a strong, robust...
Order. You must speak on the title or I'm going to terminate your speech. You can't get on to the next...
Point of order?
I'm on my feet, and the member cannot go to the next bill and bring that into this debate. I've given the instructions quite clearly, and a title debate is a very tight debate. Speak on the title.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Point of order, Sue Moroney.
Mr. Chair, just seeking your advice. I was actually responding to interjections
I'm not interested in what the member is responding to. There's been no one speak from this side. It's been an interjection. I've given my instructions quite clearly, and members ought to follow that. Sue Moroney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I won't be responding to any interjections, but do invite the members opposite to actually take a call if they have something to say, and I'd be really interested in listening to their contribution about the title of this bill. Mr. Chair, I'm not a person of the Royal Society of New Zealand world, and so I do feel very humbled to be in the company of people like Moana Maki, who are in fact members of the Royal Society of New Zealand, and also very appreciative of listening to my colleague Pete Hodgson describe the reason why we call it the Royal Society of New Zealand, because I'd have to say, Mr. Chair, being on the Select Committee and hearing the submissions on this bill, I was a little out of my depth, because this is not the world that I belong to. And so the Royal Society of New Zealand, that title actually didn't mean an awful lot to me. The Royal Society of what? I wondered, and I'm sure lots of other New Zealanders wonder what this Royal Society actually is. And it is interesting that the Royal Society, and we've discovered that this has traditionally been the case, that the Royal Society has chosen not to actually describe what it's actually the Royal Society of. It's for those in the know, I think, is how Pete Hodgson put it. And I think that is a little sad, and I'm probably quite naive in terms of making this comment, but I think for those of us who are not in the know, it would be quite useful if we knew what it was the Royal Society of. And of course this bill is expanding what it is officially the Royal Society of, and I think it would be useful to see that reflected in the title of this bill. I do accept, however, that the member who's brought this bill forward has adequately described to him that it's up to the Royal Society itself the title that they put on this bill, and obviously it's up to the Royal Society what they call their own organisation. But it would be, I think, helpful to those of us who are lesser mortals to know what the Royal Society actually does do, because in fact it's a very, very impressive organisation, and certainly in the time that I spent on the Select Committee listening to the submissions, I certainly grew to understand a great deal of what the society does. And of course it does those things that are so important to the future of this country, just so important to the future of this country. And it did leave me wondering, though, if the role of the Royal Society is as extensive as it is, then what is the role of the science advisor to the Prime Minister? And I think sometimes the science advisor to the Prime Minister wonders what his role is as well.
Order. Now, look, I've given the member a warning. I'm going to terminate that speech. If you want to speak on the title, Louise Upston.
I move that the question be